I'm Jesse Venticinque, the co-founder and CPO at Fitbod. And today I'll tell you about how we decide at Fitbod to invest our limited time and resources in a given feature idea. And, ultimately deciding how to allocate resources can, does determine a startup's success. And so it is critical to invest in features that will impact core metrics. And so the three ways we do so, first is to prioritize features within a strategic framework. Second is to identify areas of key leverage in our product. And third is to uncover need gaps in our customer base. So let's start with strategy. And deciding what to build is really backs out to strategy, which is to say, like, what are the 2 to 3 most important areas to focus on? And a framework that I found a lot of success in is offense versus defense. And in a product, offense is any feature that will drive business metrics now or in the next month or in the next quarter. On the other hand, defense are investments you make in order to prevent potential downside. So, one example is technical infrastructure to enable scale. And another big category is around fending off competition, which is typically about sustaining or developing your core value proposition. So for Fitbod, this is our workout recommendation engine and the associated experience. And, without kind of constant investment here, we could be at risk to competition. So we can't just ignore iterative improvements, right, to this kind of core experience, even if it doesn't enable some step function growth. So our kind of strategy broadly is to drive new subscribers while maintaining the minimum necessary investment in defense, but no further. And I'm going to talk about offense today, but there's a great article by Eli Lerner at Reforge that I would encourage everyone to check out. There it is there on the slide, and you can kind of easily Google it. So let's dive into offense. So a key concept is leverage, and typically a offensive feature will exhibit these 3 characteristics. So one, it operates on a large group of users, which is pretty straightforward. Otherwise, it may not significantly impact metrics. Second is that these features are typically pretty small in that they address a narrow need gap. So a feature solves a gap between a user problem and the product solution. Some need gaps are very large and require a lot of investment. So let's say Fitbod versus Strava. No one's downloading Fitbod to GPS track their runs. And if we wanted to serve that need, I mean, that would take probably a huge amount of investment, right, to try to kind of match that feature. Now, some need gaps are small and require very little investment to bridge. And the smallest need gaps is where there is none. So a solution already exists in the product, but a user just can't find it or doesn't realize it's there. So, okay, and third, these offensive features will accelerate existing growth loops. So this might look like increasing the number of users who generate content in some UGC loop, or, for us, it could be adding triggers for subscribers to refer new users, which is a big part of our acquisition. All right, locating leverage within the product. So one place to look is in the user lifecycle. So here's Fitbod's lifecycle. We're a consumer subscription business, and the first phase, acquisition, is around driving new installs. Next, activation is our trial period. And in Fitbod, we have a 3 free workout trial, and then you must subscribe to kind of log unlimited workouts. And then lastly is retention. And, we're thinking about retention on a 3-4+ year basis. And, customers who are highly engaged and retained will refer, and referral is a big part of our acquisition. So that's the kind of closing the loop there. out of about 100,000 new users, we'll yield about 10,000 subscribers. So a 10% conversion rate, which is pretty good. Now, if we look at the trial funnel, out of that 100,000 new users, about 30,000 will log workout 1. And from that 30,000, 20,000 will log workout 2. And from workout 2, 15,000 go to workout 3, and then our 10,000 will subscribe. So if we narrowly look at users who make it to workout 2 or 3 and do not subscribe, that's 10,000 users right there. And if we, I'm going to refer to this group as W2 non-sub in the talk here. And if we just compare that against our subscribers, it's a big number, right? So we could theoretically double our subscribers if we converted this cohort alone, 100%. So relative to our subscribers, it's a pretty big number and a kind of high leverage there. And one might ask, hey, why not target the 70,000 people who didn't even log workout 1? And the answer is that the need gap, right? The difference between the user problem and the product solution is likely smaller for users who made it all the way to workout 2 and 3 than users who didn't even complete workout 1. So I think like kind of the tip here is to prioritize need gaps that are farther in the life cycle before moving upstream. So if, I want to work on converting W2 non-sub first before trying to move all the way back up to, workout 0 to 1, where, it's possible there's a cohort of users looking for the Strava feature, right? So kind of the good news here is that there's like a sizable number of users that we're already acquiring that are getting far in the activation funnel, but not converting. So acquisition is not our biggest problem, like at all. And retention is not our problem. It's activation. And so if we look at this group here, we have a couple of kind of check marks. So one is that it's a large cohort relative to subscribers. It would accelerate an existing growth loop. So if we can, effectively get more subs, we have this great retention, and referral is a big part of our acquisition. So next up is around, well, is there a small need gap here that we can address? So moving on to identifying need gaps, and there's kind of 3 ways. There's quant, where we ask questions of the data, qual, where we ask questions of users, and then to ship to learn. And this is not about shipping an MVP, but about shipping like an intervention to learn about a need gap. And that's it. So I'll have some examples. Okay, starting with quant. The exercise here is to compare this cohort against our successful customers and see if there's any kind of differences or similarities. So we can look at the kind of the profile of these cohorts against each other and what actions they take in the product. So here we're looking at conversion, and this is conversion cohorted by a user's self-reported fitness level, fitness experience, advanced, beginner, intermediate. And we see here that intermediate and advanced users convert at a much higher rate than beginner. And advanced is kind of much higher, right? And so one thought could be, well, let's invest in advanced and build a feature set for them. However, the width of the line here represents the cohort size. So advanced is a pretty small cohort relative to the other two. So even if we were to invest there, it may not, move our business forward. And hey, one note about conversion charts here, they always kind of dip down as it approaches today. And let's imagine like March 8th is today, simply because users need time to move through the activation funnel. All right, here's a engagement chart. This is average workouts per week, cohorted by fitness goal, user self-reported fitness goal. So we see here that get stronger and gain lean muscle mass are more engaged. And then looking at in-product actions, I'm not going to kind of decipher this chart too much, but what I'm looking at here are kind of common actions taken in the activation funnel and comparing them against our subscribers who log like 6 or more workouts a month versus this cohort. And generally our non-sub cohort take fewer actions on average. So, you know, in our kind of investigation here, the W2 non-sub was pretty similar to our successful customers, which I guess is a good finding in that need gap could be narrow. There was another one other kind of hypothesis we were kicking around was, do users come into Fitbod with some existing habit in place, like they're already have a routine, or have they put together some fitness habit in the past? You know, lastly, or are they coming in, you know, completely having never put a habit together, and we need to build a feature set around that. So we, in, you know, a couple days, implemented an onboarding screen, and purely to segment out this question. It had no associated feature in the app. We ran it as an A/B test to understand if it hurt onboarding completion or not. And then after like a week or two, we took it out. And, you know, we learned that in fact, people, you know, our users coming to the app, you know, do have some existing habit in place, or at least had put one together in the past. So it's a good example of shipping something to learn in this case. And, you know, from this, we're able to kind of look at our successful subs and our W2 non-subs, and they are pretty similar. Okay, moving into qual. I think this might be maybe the most valuable to everyone here. So user interviews. I do believe early stage founders should do these, and I have some tips for streamlining them. And when they're like done well, it doesn't take a lot of time. I feel like I've kind of cracked it and how to do these quickly. And you know, the goal here is to kind of identify patterns that come up and up again in these interviews. And so again, I'm trying to understand the difference between the user problem and the product solution. So I'm going to investigate the problem that users come in with. And you know, users will often describe many problems, and I'm trying to kind of identify the most important one, right? The most constraining one, holding back them from subscribing. Because, you know, if I fix some of the problems, I still might not actually change behavior. So the first step here is to discover context, and you know, what was the problem that led someone to download a fitness app in the first place? That's the question I'll ask. And often I'll need to, you know, ask the 5 whys to really get to the kind of bottom level of what the problem is. And I have a few clips here of research interviews. So I'm sharing my sound, Jackie. Let me know if this we can hear this, and then I'm going to throw this on like 1.25. So let's take a listen to me asking, why did you download a fitness app in the first place? Why did you download an app in the first place, or Fitbod in the first place?
Just trying to utilize home gym a little bit more and get some more ideas on what different things to do. You know, we don't have like a full gym setup, but we have like a squat rack and barbells, dumbbells, bench kind of a thing. So, you know, what can I do besides just doing a bunch of squats?
Cool. And I think the kind of answer to this question is obvious, but I want to ask it anyway. What's the problem with just doing a bunch of squats?
I want to be able to target different muscle groups. Also, I don't want my body to get too used to a movement. You know, like I've heard the more you confuse it, the, you know, more muscle you can build. So just getting different ideas. And also just from, you know, the mental part of it, making it a little bit more interesting, a little bit less like, okay, I guess I'm just going to go do squats again. Yeah.
Okay. So the, maybe the problem you're hoping to solve, one is, you know, some more exercise variation, and, you know, utilizing your equipment. Is that right? Or are there any other kind of fitness problems you're hoping to solve with finding an app?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that those are big points, and that is something that I think that the app really did help with. But also just kind of motivating myself to push a little bit more, kind of get into a better routine.
Yeah. So, the original problem she described is about utilizing her equipment, and kind of the next level was like needing more variety around fitness gains. And then the final level there had something to do with kind of motivation. So, after I believe I've got to the base level problem, I try to understand what problem the participant perceives Fitbod is solving. And I'll ask, who do you believe Fitbod is for? Or really, like, what problem do you think other people download Fitbod to solve? And if there's kind of a mismatch there, and they describe a problem that's not theirs, in some cases I'll discover that we already solved that problem, and this person didn't realize it or didn't find it. And that's one of those great framing solutions where maybe the kind of feature here is just surfacing or describing, right, that this feature exists, which is a great kind of feature to develop, I think. But if there is a mismatch between the problem and Fitbod's solution, I will live pitch a feature solution to their problem to get signal, whether I found the core problem or not. So say someone says like, well, I think Fitbod is for people who don't know what to do and want guidance, but I'm actually looking for better progress visualization. I'll say something along the lines of, hey, well, we're developing a feature. It's actually pretty close to being done that will show you your like muscle strength over time. And I'm really excited about it. It's called M strength or something. What do you think? So, I try to pitch it as something pretty real. And if the user responds positively, then that's signal I could have located the problem. If they're neutral, then maybe I haven't found it yet. And if they respond no, that feature is not compelling, then that's a very useful signal, because I potentially haven't kind of gotten to that base level problem yet. And often we'll do concept testing, right, with like mock-ups or prototypes in these calls. And there's a few traps to avoid here. So the bottom line information I want to know, right, is like, would this feature be the difference maker in you, participant, subscribing? If this existed today, would you buy it? And again, in these sessions, I describe these concepts as like very real features. And there's a few traps. So one is that users will be able to like describe extremely well what the feature is and how it works. It does not mean it'd be the difference maker in them buying it. And similarly, they could describe why other people would really like this thing. In other words, they could describe the problem it solves, but it may not be the difference maker. So at the end kind of towards the end, I'll say, hey, explicitly, if this existed today, like, would you buy Fitbod for $79.99 a year, like right now? And here's another clip of another clip here.
App more and more like a personal trainer.
This user like perfectly describes what the feature is.
Right? It's giving you the feedback after the workout of what the activity that you did today, how it's helping you meet your goals, and how it's moving the ticker further and further towards whatever that goal is that you set at the beginning.
Cool. And would you buy the app if this feature existed?
I don't know if that would necessarily be the changer.
Okay, cool.
But I like the feature of it.
Okay, so it wouldn't. In like in a B2B business, my Eli Lerner, the guy who wrote that blog post about offense defense, I was talking to him, and he was saying like at a previous B2B startup, they would like try to get the participant to actually pull out their credit card. Like that was to buy the thing. Like that was the highest signal they could get, right? To raise the confidence to invest in some feature. Okay. And lastly, with social or viral features, there's a kind of a few similar traps. So the fundamental question, say with like a referral feature, is participant, would you invite a large number of people who don't use Fitbod? It's possible they invite a small number of people or people that already use Fitbod. So that's the fundamental question. And I will ask them to name specific people, maybe not their name, but like do the thought experiment. Tell me who you would actually send an invite to who does not use Fitbod already. And, often users will say like, oh yeah, I think I'd send this to some people. And when I dig in, I realize it might be like one person, right? Or someone that already uses the app. Okay, so some user interview tools. How I kind of do this, I go into Mixpanel and I basically can slice and dice a cohort together and download a CSV. Userinterviews.com is a tool that is really helpful in scheduling and reimbursing with like gift cards. And it's totally free if I provide my own users, which is kind of incredible. So it's just like this free tool that works really well to get these people, showing up for the call. And then in Zoom, there's like this setting that's buried to create an audio transcript. So that's kind of a core piece too. So, I can kind of like, today I could do this, right? And send it out and get participants for the, rest of the week. And each one is about 25 minutes probably. So not a huge investment and really helpful. I also, whenever I send out like a survey, at the end of the survey, I'll just ask this question: are you interested in participating in a user research interview? And so I just kind of have this like long list of, people who are interested to fall back on. Okay, lastly, ship to learn. As I mentioned, this is shipping the minimal thing to understand whether to continue down like a feature path or not. So it's not the MVP. With this W2 non-sub group, one finding is that they just didn't have enough time to evaluate the app in the 3 workouts. They didn't get to conviction yet. So we built this really like cheap in-app prompt that just gives people a trial extension, gives them 3 or 6 or 20 more workouts. This would not be the final like trial extension experience. In fact, there wasn't even any email, or this push actually wasn't part of the first test. And it was just kind of enough to learn if indeed that finding was true or not, if they did need more time and more workouts. Another finding was that folks would say that they couldn't basically log a specific format or routine or exercise. And we added like this cheap intervention to try to validate this need. We just added a coach mark like in this flow that people would likely go to try to solve this problem. And this one on the left here, did you expect a different exercise or a different workout format? Yes, yes, no. This is kind of great, and that helps us size the problem, right? Like the volume of the answer here. And then we would pop this other little kind of like coach markup afterwards, which would maybe help them solve the problem. But again, this is not at all the final design solution. This is going to be, ripped out after the test. And then lastly, these folks said that they were, they couldn't kind of gauge if they made any kind of fitness progress in 3 workouts. It wasn't long enough. And so, in about a week, we built a screen that we inserted into onboarding that just describes the progress a user would expect to see. Again, no app feature. This is a framing solution. Just expose users to this idea and measure the impact on conversion. And then decide whether to kind of continue, right, and invest in this path. So just a few results. Like the trial extension was pretty successful. Like there was like a 25% increase in this W3 non-sub. And again, I mentioned we didn't even like send any email. We relied on people opening the app 8 days after their third workout. And this outcome promise, I call it, like the fitness results promise, had a 0.65% increase in conversion for this group too, without even a feature following it. So that's signal that we are going to, and we have further developed it. So okay, that's it. So I think in summary here, we all have like very limited resources. Each feature decision is critical, and I think focus can be found in this framework that I think has been really successful. Locating leverage impacts a lot of users, operates on a small user need. In other words, it's a hopefully a cheap thing to build, and it's in this existing growth loop. So that's kind of that's leverage there. And lastly, these three methods to identify need gaps: questions of the data, the users, and kind of ship to learn. So yeah, that's all I have for you all today. Thank you much.